We're going to get started officially in about 2 minutes, but before we get going, thank you all in the room for joining. Thank you all virtually for joining. It looks like we've got about half a dozen folks online, but that's not true because there are 14 or 15 people over in the Southern Indiana club room who are watching as a watch party. They have an open house and they're doing some work on the layout. So when Rich is not presenting today, they're going to be, I don't know if they're going to be glued to the TV, but they've got chairs set up and they're going to be watching and listening all day long. So that's pretty cool. Couple visitors I'm going to note right now. Couple visitors I'm going to note right now. Jordan Kramer is an NMRA member from Division 7, good friend of ours, and a good friend of this other guy up there you might see, Gordy. Hey, Gordy, who unfortunately I think is having some connection issues today. It's supposed to be a stormy up there, but when is it not stormy up there on the little island? Gordy, did you want to pop in and say anything right now?
Hi, can you hear me?
We
Is it
can.
working now?
Yeah.
Amazing. Look at that. So, thanks for the invite. I just thought I'd come along and show my face and say hello. I'm not long after having to have a couple of weeks out while I had some surgery, so it's nice to be able to join you guys and say hello. Hopefully, you're all happy, and Fred will update you, I've no doubt, on everything that's going on, so I don't need to tell you. But hopefully, you're all been busy and enjoying the day. And thank you to Rich for coming down and giving the clinics. I know he's always on the road, but it's always appreciated. So thanks for the invite, and I'll stay as long as I can. But I've got two screaming children who've not seen me for a while, so I might have to disappear.
Hey, Gordy, other than me, everybody is dressed appropriately.
Oh, you can't see that. Yeah, it's not gonna. No,
I can't. It's radio. Describe it.
It's a kilt from Florida.
You've got a kilt on.
No,
they all do, except for me.
No kilts.
I haven't got my kilt on today. It's far too bad weather for that. So,
all righty, sir. Thank you. And
thank you.
What the guys here have found is that anytime they hear something from the NMRA is happening, my standard answer is, first of all, it's a rumor. Don't believe it. And then when Gordy announces it a day later, I say, but that won't happen in a year. And then you announce it's happening tomorrow. So that's the standard procedure around here. So the last thing is for people in the room, yeah, you can almost see this. If I put it in front of my nose, you can. There you go. Yeah. For people in the room, over on the sign-in table, and we're not going to sign in for the meeting until the meeting at 2 o'clock. There are stickers over there for you. So kind of to celebrate the day, to acknowledge the day, it says Louisville, Kentucky Division 8 Train Day. And it's a little round sticker here, and around the edge it has the date, April 13, 2024. And feel free to pick up one of those and put it on your laptop or your nose or someplace else that's appropriate, Mike.
Russ, take it away.
Oh, okay.
I need you to speak for at least a couple of minutes.
Okay. Everything is going just real great at the Weiss layout here. Shoulder is coming along.
Talk about Rich.
Ah, okay. Oh, I thought you wanted me to stall for a couple minutes. So sorry, Rich. Well, we are pleased to welcome Rich Mahaney here with us. Rich is the president of the North Central region and came all the way down from Southern Michigan to give us some very interesting clinics today, which I know you'll enjoy. So, Rich, I'll let you get started with the first one, and welcome.
All right. Well, thank you very much. The opportunity to come down here is something that when they invited me, I thought, wow, great. Another state to speak in, another group to talk to, and all those kind of things. And as Gordy's kind of noted there, I do travel the country. Last weekend, I taught at the Rockford, Illinois, Rock Valley meeting and stuff like that for them, something I've been doing every year, literally since 2007 or 2008. And so I had a lot of fun doing that. And then here, and then this next week, I teach at the Michigan Safety Conference in my other world, safety, loss prevention, all those things. And then the next railroad event is Vancouver, British Columbia, Memorial Day weekend. You know, in Canada, they don't have Memorial Day weekend on the same weekend we do. So it's a regular work day or work weekend for them. And it is a holiday here, but that's when the Pacific Northwest region and the British Columbia Model Railroad Group got together to do a joint conference and stuff like that. So I put a slide up here while I'm talking. If you can write that down, that'll help out for you during our presentation. But otherwise, you can take a picture of it if you want. That's the new way of taking notes. You know, take a picture of this and stuff like that. Matter of fact, you'll notice that these pointers that we have are great, except they don't work on these kind of screens. But the old-fashioned ruler works good, you know, to point to things and stuff like that. So that was the longest one they had in the building. But anyhow, so I'm going to present 4 presentations today from my group of about 30 clinics that I do all over North America. And I continue to produce new clinics. I got about 3 more years to do this, and then I'm going to sort of start backing out of doing activities so like that. I'll be 75 because I want to spend time with my wife doing things. And so if somebody asks me, will you come do clinics for us? Because I've been kind of known as the clinic guy from Michigan. I'll ask those basic questions. Is it someplace we've never been? Is it someplace on our list that we want to go to? Do we have grandchildren nearby? You know, and things like that as we begin to look at some of these other things going on in our lives and that type of thing. So I've been doing model railroading since I was about 5 when I got my first train set, like most of you. It was an S-gauge train that I sold at a hobby shop to get to HO. And of course, they took and probably made a killing selling all that stuff that I should have kept. And but I've worked in this industry. I've taught hazmat, tank car emergency response. So that's tied to this first clinic, and just done a lot of things and have had a wonderful time in the NMRA. And Gordy's heard this before, but my give back to the NMRA, everybody says, what do you get out of the NMRA? And I go, no, it's not about what do I get, it's what do I give back? And my giving back to the years of being in the NMRA and all the friends I've met and all the layouts I've been to has been the opportunity to present clinics, which I enjoy doing, and the photography back to NMRA groups. And it's I have a bachelor's and master's in education, so I have been teaching in industry and across North America for years. Did live in Saudi Arabia and taught there. Taught in Cairo, Egypt, taught in Trinidad, and I have gotten around. So that's my payback. And whenever I talk about the NMRA, I always ask, what are you doing for your local NMRA group? And I've come up to be the president of the North Central region. I'm in the second year of that tour. I'm running again this year for 2 more years, and because I enjoy it and it's an opportunity to do things. You probably know we have a little event coming up in Detroit, Michigan area in 2025. We're hosting the National in Novi, Michigan. Should be a great week of model railroading and an opportunity. It's a convention like you haven't been to before. It's a little shorter. It's a drive to everything kind of deal. If we get over 1,000 people, we're probably in trouble with a hotel space. And if we've got some 50 to 100 layouts, and we're trying to make it as affordable as possible, but it's a layout or it's a convention like you haven't been to before, maybe the future model of NMRA conventions and what we're doing. So
Rich,
look forward to have you.
how far is it from Louisville to the convention?
Well, it's
Short drive.
yeah, a couple hours, but you're going to want a car because there's no buses other than for a couple of things. So let's see here, maps from here to Novi, Michigan. We can, oops, let me put this in if I can spell right. Novi, Michigan. Direction
6 hours. My
from here.
mom used to live there, so I can tell you from here, 6 hours nonstop.
Okay, my phone says to Novi, 5 hours and 32 minutes from this library if you start from here. And,
Yeah, you'll never do it.
5 hours.
6 hours.
Are full of ladies with them.
Okay, 5 hours and 32 minutes, 371 miles. So it's an easy day trip up, and we start Monday afternoon and go the week. So, and there is a train show at the end of the week and all those things. So we're looking forward to a nice crowd. Been working hard. In fact, today while we're here, they're having a meeting at the hotel to discuss some of the details as we begin to bring this together. So we'd love to see you guys up in Novi, Michigan in 2025 in July. And of course, the year after that, they're in Chattanooga. which is just down the road from here. So kind of stuff. So anyhow, we have 9 divisions in the North Central region. I've been working my way around doing clinics and visiting all of them as the job of the president and having a good time, and everything's good up north. And as far as that, if you're interested in seeing newsletters, get hook on to the Hot Box from the North Central region. Barry Hensel produces that 4 times a year, so you can see what's going on. But anyhow, with that, that's about me. And we will go ahead and get started here unless there's a question. I put this slide up on the air to start with because it kind of illustrates some of the things we're going to talk about in this clinic on tank cars. And actually, to be interested, you might be interested in knowing this was the first clinic that I produced back in 2007, 2008, because I'm a hazmat guy. I'm a emergency responder, and tank cars and hazmat and derailments were my love. And so I had so many people ask me, well, what kind of tank car is that? So this was actually the very first clinic. It's been revised a number of times, but anyhow, this is where it all started. And like I said, I'm up around 30 of them in my computer. So tank cars 101. So we're going to look at the basics of tank cars. We're going to look a little bit at placement in trains, a little bit about hazardous materials, talk about the different kinds, things that are happening and changing that are going on right now. This is in the middle of a big period of time with getting rid of DOT 111 tank cars hauling low hazard or low flashpoint flammable liquids because of the things that happened with ethanol and crude oil trains over the last few years and stuff like that. There may be a little humor. Hopefully you'll catch that. And I'll probably teach you more about tank cars than you ever wanted to know. And I apologize for that. So this is where it all started. And if you get up to Pennsylvania, there's a place where they discovered oil in Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania, and they needed to transport it. So these were the original tank cars before they went to a vertical tank that was also built up in that area. And so you can go visit the original drilling point. And this is in Milton, Pennsylvania, where this tank car is on display of what the original tank car concept is. So this is what we had to start with and where we are. Now, if you want that model on your train, you can buy those to do that if you're in the right period, or just have it in front of a factory or on a siding or something like that. So they've been around for a while, and they've come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. The designs of tank cars have changed over the years because of derailments, where we had to learn how to make them better for the use and the incidents that occurred, new construction, new tank car rules. And we're going through that right now because of the things that happened with crude oil and ethanol. And crude oil, for the beginning, was out of the Bakken oil fields up in North Dakota. If you've never been up there, it's kind of an interesting place to go look at this crude oil situation and all the train cars that go out of there. Now we have this oil in other places in the U.S. Basically, those of us who teach tank cars, and I would use the same presentation with a few changes when I train firefighters. So if we had a room full of firefighters, I'd be talking about the same kind of things. Those of us that teach us teach 3 groups. So our first group is what we call low pressure tank cars, also known as general service. Some people call them non-pressure tank cars. That is not true. If I take a tank car that's empty and I put water in it and set it out in the sun, it's going to heat up. It's going to produce steam inside or heat inside and pressure. And you open the top, it's going to go whoosh. How can that not be be pressure? So the industry calls it general service. Some people call them non-pressure. Those of us in the teaching business call them low pressure tank cars. And then what we have are high pressure tank cars, and we'll go into more detail in a couple minutes, but high pressure tank cars handle a lot of nasty stuff. And then we have this family called cryogenic tank cars, which haul and transport materials that are very, very cold across the U.S. So, all right, so here's a better look at our non-pressure tank cars. So in that first slide, I said to you, write down DOT 111, 211, 115. We've got some newer ones there we'll talk about in a second. But those are the specifications. So when you're looking at these tank cars and you're at a crossing or a city in the yard, this place right here has the specification right there on the right-hand side. So that tells me something about. So if I'm going to a train derailment or I'm involved with response, the first thing I look at is what's up here on the top. As far as what's on top, is there one thing or is there more than one thing? So if I have one thing, I'm a pressure car. If I have more than one thing, I'm a low pressure car. And then I look over here at the specs to see what's going on. And that helps me be sure. And just to double check, I'll look and see at the bottom, are there any outlets? Because pressure cars don't have outlets on the bottom. So there's three things I would look at when I'm looking at tank cars to determine the class. So originally the DOT 103s were out there. We used those for years and years. And then we finally got now into the situation where our common tank car is the DOT 111. Then there's a version of that that's just slightly different, AR 211. And then we have a DOT 115. We'll show you some pictures of these. These tank cars typically operate in a pressure world of 0 to 100 PSI. So when I put commodities in there and things like that, that's the kind of pressure I might find in there as a thing. We've come along because of ethanol and crude oil. We created a thing called the DOT 111 CPC 1232 tank car. And when we did that, we started looking at head shields external on the tank car here. We looked at the stuff on top, the bottom outlets, and we began to look at a tank car that's going to be a little more structurally sound in derailments. Didn't work very good. Still out there, but we then changed over and went to the DOT 117, which is a much stronger tank car. And then we also have what's called the DOT 117R. R stands for retrofit. And what that means is they took a 111 and they added all the features to it to make it like a 117. So it's an older car that's been upgraded. So you can buy a 117 or you can buy a 111 that's been upgraded to the same spec. And so that wasn't good enough for us in our derailment. So then they created a DOT 120, which is in the next slide. A 120 looks like this, but it's actually a pressure car specification. So if you looked and typed into the internet, DOT 120 tank car, you'll find out about it. But it's a pressure car, but it's holding low pressure products and stuff like that. About 78% of the fleet in North America is in this low pressure or non-pressure tank cars. And again, you can interchange those words, but all of us call it low pressure. And then the original one was the 103 there at the bottom, and you can go back. So when I buy a tank car, I'll look and see what does it say on the side of it. In my model railroad world, because it's got to be right. I look at the build dates and stuff like that. But again, these are the low pressure tank cars. So when we switch to high pressure, we now only see one thing at the top up there versus the other one that had four things. And our specs are the DOT 112, which is the common tank car that holds propane, anhydrous ammonia, the general kinds of things that you see transported all the time. DOT 114, which handle the things that are refrigerants in most cases. And then the DOT 105. The DOT 105 is the strongest tank car in the fleet, and it's the one that transports all the nasties, the chlorines, the sulfur dioxides, those kinds of things are in 105. So again, things to look at. And then, as I said, the new one added into that, and I didn't put it in the slide there, I guess, is the DOT 120, which is in this family, but it's really hauling low pressure kind of products. Tank car pressure is 100 to 600 PSI, and about a quarter of the fleet in North America, US and Canada, are in these kind of cars as we go along. So then we get into what's called the cryogenic tank cars, and these look a little different, and I'll show you pictures later. But when they go by you on the tracks, you would say there's something different about this car, and based on the shape and the features. There's two of them, DOT 113, AR 204. AR stands for what? Very good. Yeah, there you go. Another group that does tech car specifications besides DOT. And then 0 to 25 PSI, they have products that have boiling points of minus 130 degrees, so pretty cold. And there's only a few hundred cars of these in North America. And every now and then you'll see one go by you on a train. There's a place in Iowa, when I worked in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. If you go towards the Mississippi River, there's a plant that loads a lot of those with ethylene, and a lot to see. I found a place west of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they unload a lot of them. I call it kind of the mecca of cryogenic tank cars. So this is that place right here in that picture, west of Tulsa. And we were coming back from an Oklahoma State Fire Protection and Safety alumni reunion, and drove by there. My friend George Danson and I went, "Hey, look, the fence gate's open." Open invitation, for Rich to take upgraded pictures and stuff like that. So this is outside Tulsa, Oklahoma. But before we actually get into all the pictures of tank cars, I want you to know something more about these tank cars that we transport products in. So to start with, this is just a whole bunch of different things. first off, the hazardous materials classes are 9 classes used throughout the world. So here's a list of all those classes. So even where Gordy is, they use those same 9 hazard classes for the products. And so again, our tank cars are in the class 3 and class 2 products that are up there for the things that they're transporting. So when you look at the placards here and you see this number in the bottom corner here, that's referring to those hazard classes that are on that list right there. So again, things to know and learn about. Tank cars also haul a lot of corrosives. Those are both acids and bases. So what do the 4-digit numbers mean? 1064 would tell me that's a certain product. I can look it up in the Emergency Response Guidebook there. There's the 2020 version. The new book is coming out this year. I can also go to my phone and bring up the ERG on my phone. There it is in the bottom corner there by my finger. Or I can just type into Google, what is UN 1064? And I can find out that information. So again, it's all out there. But the book is being replaced or being upgraded, does it every 3 years. So the new version comes out this spring. And it's a joint US-Canadian version. It used to be, we had our own, they had their own. They actually had some better stuff in theirs than we did in ours. And then when they blended it together, we got the tank car, the diagrams of trucks and rail cars, stuff like that. And it keeps getting upgraded and stuff. So I have one from Saudi Arabia. And it's kind of interesting. It was made by Saudi Aramco for the Saudi Fire Service. And because you read from left to right, and right to left, you start at the back of the book in Saudi, and then you go forward. And it's both in Arabic and it's in English. So anyhow, here's a tank car we're looking at. This is up at Dow Corning in Midland, Michigan. So I would look here, and I'd see a 6 for what class? That's going to be a liquid. 1818 is the product. Oh, it's got a skull and crossbones. That tells me it's poisonous. And then up here, I have a dangerous when wet blue placard up in the upper corner there that tells me a little bit more about the hazard. So 6s can either be liquids or solids as far as that situation. So this case would be a liquid. So lots to learn about placards. And a lot of times the placards don't tell you everything. I'm actually doing a clinic next December in Michigan for firefighters on what the placard doesn't tell you in the way of hazards. So, all right, here's a bromine tank car in a plant that's now gone and up in Adrian, Michigan. It's a DOT 105. So what did I tell you about 105s? They transport the worst of the worst in hazardous materials. So it's a heavy product, small tank car, one thing up on top there, and then does have 2 placards there telling you about the hazard. It has a poison one, and then it has a corrosive one next to it. So it's got multiple hazards. All right, this you can't read, but I was traveling from through Kentucky over to Virginia on a family trip, and I looked over and I saw this tank car, and I looked at the placard, I looked it up, and I'm going, what are they doing transporting the materials to make sarin and VX nerve agents on the railroad, the precursor chemicals? And when I looked up the number, and I'm like, what? I didn't know we transported those things in tank cars, but that's what it was. So it was precursors for sarin and VX nerve agents being transported. So you think gasoline's bad, there's other things out there on the road. Having hung out in the Army center down at Fort McClellan, Alabama, actually, where you get a chance to actually play in sarin and VX nerve agent as emergency responders. I was there when it was just changed, from the Army to a first responder training facility, and had a chance to do that a couple of times now. It's kind of a scary thing, but there it is on the table. There's the agents. So as we start looking and thinking about transporting products on the railroad, tank cars can be fully loaded. Great. They can be empty, which does not mean cleaned out. We'll talk about that in a second. And they can be empty, cleaned out. So again, when we look at this situation, we need to know something about this. Tank cars listed as empty may have up to 3% of the original product still in the car, but the paperwork says it's empty. So if I take a LPG car, 3% of 30,000 is what? About 1,000 gallons. That's 2 of those propane tanks behind somebody's house that are still in it. Dangerous or not dangerous? Dangerous. Okay, so I have no liquid to change to a gas. I may just have a little bit. The rest of the tank car is all full of vapor, and so it's a big deal. So the railroad paperwork would show that it's listed as empty on there, but we call that residual. And in the old days, if you're modeling with placards, the placard used to be turned over and it said residual on the back side of the placard. You insert that in the thing. We don't do that anymore. It has to have the same placard, whether it's full or empty, as long as it hasn't been washed out and cleaned out. So there are ones that are completely cleaned out. I photographed some in Rochelle, Illinois last Sunday afternoon. They were lined up waiting to be filled with ethanol at the plant. Yes.
Rich, when did that rule change?
I can't tell you.
That's important as well.
Oh, I know. I have people ask me, Rich, put together a clinic on placarding over the years. And I know the placard started with the Bureau of Explosives back in about 1900 because of explosives on the railroad, and then liquids and poisons and corrosives and all the way along. So we've done things probably in the 70s. We kind of got away, 70s, 80s, with residual placards going away.
Good. That means I can get away with nothing.
Yeah. So one of these days, I've been collecting pictures of those tank cars and those placards. I own a number of those placards in my collection and stuff like that. And one of these days, Bob Chaparro, some of you might have heard of out in California, he and I swap a lot of pictures of placarding and stuff like that and talk about it. But is it a factor and stuff like that? So, so determining whether it's fully loaded, empty but not cleaned out, or empty will make a difference as to whether it has a placard or not, and which placard's on there as far as that. So, and also where it sits in the train. So when we look at placards, have to be on all four sides currently and in the old days. And as far as that, again, we said residue is up to 3% of the original product. So train lists are what we call that piece of paper that has all the cars in the train on it. And so if I have emergency responders, and I have a derailment module, actual train derailment, 34 cars or 33 cars that I take out the train emergency responders, set it up on the table here, and they walk in, and here's your derailment. What are you going to do? And if they say to me, hey, I want a copy of that piece of paper that shows about all the train cars, I go, you don't get it. Tell me what it's called. Consist, wheel report, switch list, all those things. If you can't tell me what it's called, I can't give it to you. You know, well, yeah, but I need it. Tell me what it's called, you know, and that's all a training thing. But once you have that paperwork in, they're all listed on there from the engines and the all the cars all the way to the end. All the railroads in America go from the front of the train to the back of the train on the paperwork, except Union Pacific. And they go from the back of the train to the front, like they still have cabooses, you know, and stuff like that. So anyhow, kind of an interesting fact. But again, that's important. And those of you who model and stuff like that will think about that.
Is the UP owned by Saudis?
No.
Is that the reason they read them the wrong way?
No, it's just an old thing, old habit from the caboose days. And it's like, why do you want to be different than everybody else? So when we look at train lists, and again, when my 33 car train has a train list that I had my friends at BNSF typed out the list for me in their computer system with all the cars and the numbers and all that stuff. So it's all just as the way it should be for that situation. But again, train lists will vary between the mixed freight versus an intermodal train versus the tank car train with ethanol and crude oil, unit trains and stuff like that. Now, the interesting thing about the intermodal train is, see this car right here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, these are actually 3. These intermodal cars are either going to be 1, a group of 3, or a group of 5. So this is 3 right here, and then there's 3 more. So this will have 1 number for that car to the railroad. You see it as 3, but the railroad sees it as 1. So now I look at my paperwork and I see that every one of these containers will be listed on the paperwork, but this will only show as 1 car. So there'll be groups of 5, groups of 3, and groups of 1, and it will vary. So when you're sitting there at the track watching these go by, look and see if you can determine is it a 1, or is it a group of 3, or a group of 5 going across. And they do haul hazardous materials in those and that kind of thing. So lots of stuff. So the paperwork looks a little different. I know you can't read this in the small screen it is, but this is a typical train list. So here's my power up front, and I come down 1 car, 2 car, 3. And down here at 6, I have a tank car with hazardous material. So there's a hazmat flag there, and it tells me where it's going, where it's coming from. It's hauling styrene monomer. It's inhibited. That means it's been chemically treated to keep it happy for 20 days while it's en route. If the inhibitor runs out, it begins to get active, begins heating up and filling the car with product. and it could blow the pressure relief device. So again, it has my UN number for the product. It's a packing group 2. Down here, I have an RQ. That doesn't mean run quick. RQ stands for reportable quantity. And so we have that here, styrene. And then I showed you the placard numbers. There's also called a hazmat stick number, standard transportation commodity code. And the railroads were using a 5-digit number long before we got into the placard numbers. So this is something that their marketing department would use, 49 or 48. So is it hazmat or is it hazardous waste? And then here's the number for the thing. So we have multiple places of getting information here. What car is it? And they do a really fancy thing about loaded and empty, L versus E, you know, and then where it's going to and where it's coming from. So these are all things we would look at on the paperwork as far as the tank cars. So, and when they do the hazmat on the intermodal containers, so I would come down, and if we had time, we could spend. So car number 1 is sitting there, and then it has all these containers listed, and then they have here's 2 hazmats in one of the containers. One of them is 1.5 liters of ethanol, and this one is a 1 liter package of phosphoric acid. So that's how small it is. So if you respond to that derailment, you looked at the paperwork and you looked at that overturned intermodal cars, you need to find those 2 containers to ensure that they're not leaking. How big is 1 liter? You know, that's mixed in with all the Christmas presents going to California. So I got to find that package, and I got to make sure that product is there. So they are listed in there. So lots to learn when you're looking at the paperwork. So yeah, where do we put tank cars in the train? And that depends. These are the modern rules, but there are some stuff that goes backwards in history about where they used to place hazardous material. So now we have fully loaded hazmat tank cars. There's a 5-car buffer between the engines and where that tanker shows up. So if you're modeling today, you would need to do that and set 5 cars between, and that's part of the rules to help keep the crew safe and things like that. If you have a residual car, empty but not cleaned out, you have to have a 1-car buffer between the crew and the car. If it's empty, cleaned out, put it wherever you want. If it's not a hazmat load, but it's in a tank car, it's milk, put it wherever you want, you know, and things like that. So those are there. We are concerned about looking at where incompatible materials are to each other as far as that. So if I'm using this information right here, and you look at that picture, I've got 2 pieces of power, and then I've got a car, then I got a tank car. So what do you think that tank car is in the train? Residual, could be empty, cleaned out, could be non-hazmat product, could be a tank car full of milk and stuff like that are in there. So again, if you want to play that game with your operating crews in today's world, again, those are the rules that we work with. The unit trains, when they first started putting the unit trains out with ethanol and crude oil, the crew was right next to the cars. Now there's what? Covered hopper or 2 covered hoppers there, and probably at the other end because they turn the train around on a loop to fill it. But they use covered hoppers as the spacer between the crew. So a little different rules with the union and stuff like that when they got into the unit trains. But I've seen a lot of different unit trains over the years. When I lived out in Iowa, stuff, you'd see corn syrup as a unit train. Is corn syrup hazardous? Slightly when it's on the ground because it attracts lots and lots of bees. So now you got to be prepared to, you know, kill bees and stuff like that. So again, not a big deal, but it is an issue. So and they could do propane unit trains and various other kind of things. So anyhow, things to think about with that spacing situation there that is required. Okay, what happens when they mix will vary with you know, the different kinds of products. Here we have a poison and a liquid that's flammable as far as that. So if it has a white space in the bottom here, that would tell me it's a higher hazard, or not higher hazard, higher flash point and stuff. So unit train we talked briefly about. Again, there's usually 1 or 2 buffer cars between the crew and all those tank cars. And again, a great place to go look at them is up in North Dakota where they're loading them and stuff like that. But they are all over the country. So, and you can see them in a variety of places traveling. All right, tank car basics. The end of the tank car with the brake wheel is known as the B end, B for brake wheel. Okay, so the other end of the tank car is called the A end. What does that stand for? Another end. Okay, we got the B end, breakaway end, and A, the other end, another end. So again, that when we deal with derailments and we're writing up reports and stuff like that, we start from the B end of the car, and on this side is the right side, this is the left side. These are wheel set number 1, number 2, the other end 3 and 4. So again, all that part is a description when you're trying to determine and tell everybody where the problem is. Again, we have a half a head shield here. So this is going to be an older style car. Nowadays, we try to get all the heads built with head shields in them, but this one's on the outside of it. And we got 2 placards there. Yeah, I guess there's 3. So when I get in the right angle. So, all right. So we talked about these numbers before, and hopefully you took a picture of that and you wrote it down so that you're in good shape as we talk about these cars by individuals. So when we look at high pressure, low pressure, what did I tell you about up on top? I said, when I first get there, I look at the top for what? Is there one thing or is there more than one thing? More than one thing says low pressure, and that's changing a little bit because of all the derailments where they're trying to put as many things that were up on top in a compartment to help protect them when the car rolls over. So sometimes it can be difficult to tell from a distance from the old days. So up here on this side over here, we have a corrosive tank car. And you can see all the valves and fittings up there. Over here, we have a pressure car, all the valves and fittings and everything are inside there. So again, we can look at that. So here we have high pressure, low pressure. The question is based on when you see when the slide or the sign moves out of there. Okay, what do I have on top? One or more than one? More than one. So that's a low pressure tank car. So you're just going to count 1. And if you get to 2, you've already made the decision, you know, in this case, 3 or 4. As far as that situation. So you can practice this with your family at the crossing. I know Fred's going to do that with his wife on the way home today, go down the track, and we'll challenge her on, as tank cars going by, high pressure, low pressure, high pressure, low pressure. My kids don't go with me anywhere anymore because I always made them look up things in the ERG while we were traveling on the highway. Tell me what this chemical is. Should I slow down, speed up? What should I do? You know, Dad, and all those things. And the same with the tank car thing.
So Rich, I want to get this straight. I only have to count to 2.
That's right.
Dude, I got it.
Okay.
I can do that.
So 1, high pressure, 2, low pressure, 3, low pressure, 4, low pressure. And again, based on the age of the tank car and what the manufacturers are doing, they're trying to get all that stuff in a protective housing, except for one extra item out there, which would be the pressure relief device. So, or the manway, whatever. So what is this? High pressure, low pressure? High pressure. One thing, and that's all there is on. Good job. All right, high pressure, low pressure. See, you guys can do this on the way home, Barbara and Fred. You can do this on the drive. Take her to UC's for some dinner, then sit by the track and call them out as they're going by. So, high pressure, low pressure. Low on that side, high on this side. So see how much you already learned today? So again, high pressure, low pressure. Low. Yeah, there's a more than, oops, I can't do that. There's more than one thing up here on the top, you know, as far as that. So that's one of the first things to look at on your layout. So, or on your railroad booking. This is a corrosive tank car. All the valves and fittings are up on top. They're exposed as compared to putting them inside something. Here's a hydrogen peroxide car. And when we look at it, we see up on top, see the little red things on top there? For some reason, all of that stuff on hydrogen peroxide cars are always red. I don't know why. And in 2015, 2014 is the number. Again, hydrogen peroxide is one of those things. When you get the stronger stuff and it spills, it gets on the ties. And when you didn't have a fire before, suddenly you now have a fire because the hazmat the product is reacting with the creosote and the wood and the oxygen. And suddenly you have a fire. All 4 sides of the tetrahedron come together. So again, you look at hydrogen peroxide. 2015, 2014 are the numbers. So again, specifications are on that side, and the reporting marks are over on this side. And when we look at tank cars, so you'll see the reporting marks is like a license plate. Every car, there's only one of that number in North America. So. All right, specification plates. When we look at this, just a little bit of information. I'm not trying to make emergency responders, but here I have hydrogen peroxide is the car or is the product inside. And then I say right here, DOT 111. 111 was what? High pressure, low pressure. Back from the very beginning. Low pressure, DOT 111. All right. And then I have an S right here, and that's a spacer, but it tells me I have shelf couplers, which every tank car has now. And then I have head shields on the end. And then 60 is my tank test pressure. It's an AL for aluminum. There's a W, and with the W's, there's 1 through 7. And each of those have different kinds of outlets and things like that, if you really got into it. Then I get in my tank qualifications, hydrogen thickness test, service equipment. When does the vent have to be replaced or fixed, or when does it open, and things like that. So lots to read here, but your key thing is this right here. And you might want to learn some of these other things that are listed up there as far as that. So this one is, again, hydrogen peroxide 2014. That's one down from the 2015 I showed you just before. So it's a little less hazardous for that situation. So, all right, A, S, T, and J. I told you this is something you should write down. A is a spacer, and it's up in this listing here. So there's an A, here's an S, a T, and here's a J. Okay, A is a spacer, and it means it has shelf couplers. Every tank car now has shelf couplers, so that they don't tend to roll off. You know, they tend to stay together in the train when there's derailment. The bad thing is with shelf couplers, when one goes off, all of them may go off. You know, that kind of thing, because they're hooked together. S means shelf couplers and head shields on the end. That's what the S tells me. All right, if I go to T, I have shelf couplers, head shields, and thermal spray-on insulation on the outside of the car. We don't see too much of that anymore because it just didn't work very well. It falls off, things like that. J means that this tank car has shelf couplers, head shields, a jacket, and insulation under the jacket. So that's what the A, S, T, and J mean in this these writing. But then again, 500 psi tank test pressure. Here's 340 over there, 100 tank pressure. And then there's the W's. And again, I said there's W1 through 7 are different specs that you can learn about and stuff like that. So here's a DOT 117R. And what did I say the R stood for? Retrofit. So I'll have another picture coming up. But here's one there. So again, I'm looking for those kind of things when I'm at the crossing. There's a DOT 111, AR 211, which is a little different than a 111. Typically carrying class 9 materials, not crude oil, but corn oil and those kinds of commodities and stuff like that. So, all right. So specifications, here's anhydrous ammonia, which again is a nasty product. So it's going to be in a DOT 112 car. So again, here it says 112, J, 340 is the tank test pressure, and the placard for it. So again, there's lots to learn about all this stuff when you really get into it. Here's some examples of W1, 2, and 3s and on tank cars. So again, just showing that as an example. Here's a W4, 5, 6, and 7, but there's an open space up in that one corner. In all of my years of taking pictures of tank cars, chasing trains, working for the BNSF out in the Southwest doing emergency responder training for fire departments along their Transcon main line, I have yet to ever see a W4 car. So somewhere they're out there, but I've never seen one. So again, 1 through 7, different features are part of that. Corrosives are W2s and W5 cars. So here's hydrochloric acid. And the built date's important because we changed steels over the years with tank cars. What didn't work good, we went to different steel. So as an emergency responder, we want to know what the date the car was built based on what kind of steel was used. Do I have a bigger response concern about it blowing up and things like that? Tank car shell thickness, here's some examples of how thick the tank is itself. And in the case of the picture, you can see this is a jacketed tank car. So we have the jacket, the insulation, and then the actual tank. But you can see the thicknesses there, the different types of products and what they're in as far as tank cars. So when the jacket is damaged in a derailment, I don't really care because it's just protecting the insulation. I'm concerned, have we done something to the tank below the jacket and the insulation? That's the big concern. So the jackets will get ripped off when they do the tank car assessments. They get to look at the actual tank and what the damage is. Over in Tennessee, I'm trying to think of the name of the city, just like that. There was a train derailment, and they were working to unload the cars. Waverly, Tennessee, and there's a little tank. There's a caboose there with a museum in it. There's a big monument to the emergency responders and others that died in that community. But the derailment was on Wednesday, and on Friday they were going to offload this propane tank car. It had been cold and stuff like that. But it's Friday morning, the sun came up. What is the sun going to do to that tank car? It began warming it up. Okay, so when you first get there, you always get a gauge and put it on the car to see what the pressure reading is inside. Well, this car had been damaged on the inside, on the actual jacket, and as it warmed up and the pressure increased, all of a sudden, before they were ready to take the product out, it blew up. Always cut what's my safety factor? Well, it's going to open up at 400 tank test pressure. So if I get to 150, 200, I need to be taking action, that kind of a thing, because I need to know what's going on. In this case, this is years ago. A lot of these things have changed in how we train and do things, but they lost the tank car at the street there and stuff like that. Killed a lot of people. But it was Wednesday to Friday before it happened. So understanding these things about pressures and stuff like that. So a lot of our tank cars will have jackets on them, and the jacket just covers the insulation. It doesn't really do anything. So here my bolster is all out and exposed, so that would be a non-jacketed tank car, versus here where it's all underneath the jacket there. So that is a jacketed car. So here we have a lot of patches on that tank car. It's hauling chlorine. You think that's the jacket or the tank? That's a jacket. So they can do all kinds of fancy stuff to patch jackets. But if that was the tank and the raw product was behind there, I'd be concerned. So this is the jacket that we're looking at. So head shields on the ends. We've gone to this over the last few years now, and there were half head shields, and then we go to full head shields. Matter of fact, Walters and I talk often on, one of the guys there, about they're going to produce a new model of a tank car. Hey, Rich, tell us about the specs. Do you have some pictures? We had a big argument one day about whether you get credit for the half head shield or not, because they didn't put the S on the tank car specs that they were going to build. And so we had quite a discussion. It was a learning for me that I said, if you got a head shield, you got to have the S in the specs. If it's a half a head shield, you don't get credit for it. It's nice, it's good, but you don't get credit for it in the specs. It's got to be a full head shield to get an S on. So again, learning. And just recently, they contacted me about a new tank car they want to build, and do I have any pictures and things like that. So we'll see how it comes.
What's the thickness of the head shield?
Half, 3/4 inch. Yeah. So here's some external head shields on cars. Here's a thermal insulated car, spray on insulation. All right. There's a full head shield on that car over there. And then these have half head shields, a little different designs. And then that's the car where it's on the outside there. It's a full head shield. These are down in Texas, at Pampa, Texas. North of the truck there with 6 sets of wheels on it. So again, head shields, these are fully enclosed in the ends. Again, head shields are designed to keep the cars, when they go off the track, from puncturing the ends of the tanks. And typically it does work pretty good. Not a guarantee. When we go to low pressure tank cars and high pressure tank cars, we also have to look at how do we relieve the pressure. So we'll either have a pressure relief device, a PRD over there, which that's the term they call it, or they'll have some sort of a vent that has a wafer thing in there that will rupture when the pressure gets high enough. But it also ruptures from sloshing of liquids. And now you got a problem, we got to fix that. Tennis ball fits just perfectly in that hole and allows us to put that in there, that caps it, close this, and we can move the car down the track someplace where then we can offload it and stuff like that after we have approval to move it. So again, that kind of stuff. And the pressure relief device normally is above the product and opens at a specific pressure. Now, the color of the tank car mean anything? You know? Okay. This is in Hereford, Texas on display. And I think the only thing it does, for the industry was it helped Lionel design a tank car for them to sell, as far as that. But no, color does not necessarily mean anything. It could, but it doesn't necessarily normally do that. So here's the Lionel. These, it did do something. They don't do this anymore after September 11th. These cars here were carried hydrocyanic acid. That's the gas that we used in killing prisoners in the old days in gas chambers. And these were called the candy striper cars. And so if you're modeling at a certain period of time and you're going to have some of these, I saw a model of one of these at a train show or two where somebody has done it, and they had some things that were wrong, but they did have the stripe looking right. But after the terrorist attack in the U.S., we said, you know what? If I have a shoulder-mounted rocket, this is a perfect target right here, where those two red lines cross. So we said, let's remove those and either paint them white or paint them black in the industry. But these were the candy striper cars for hydrocyanic acid. So we will see different shells, different colors. Some of them mean something. Blue typically is Celanese. Gray typically is Hooker chemical. But it's just something that they chose as a thing. It's not a code from the industry. Propane, anhydrous ammonia, all that stuff could be black, could be white. Same car, just somebody chooses a color that they want to paint their cars. So, although the white one will reflect the sun a little bit, will help keep things a little cooler. So, all right, blue Celanese doesn't mean anything other than Celanese typically paints their cars blue. So, also up on top, you'll see trains going through that have the protective housing painted different colors. That's not a rule. That's an industry thing that company has decided they wanted to do for their tank cars. So I've seen orange or red. I've seen green. And it's just something that the industry does on. So, tank car capacity, how much do they hold? In the old days, you had the housing and the area, the space up on the top there where you could fill it higher. That's where all of the extra pressure and stuff went up there, and extra as it increased the capacity, it filled up in that housing up on top. And in their expansion dome, we called it. So today, we fill them almost to the top. Right? So when we look in there, these are all markings for tank car filling. How full do you fill it? So these are indicators, outage indicators. So if you're filling cars in Canada and up in Calgary, Canada, that you're going to ship to Mexico in January, is there a temperature difference between Canada and Mexico? And that's going to make the product increase in size. So you got to look that up. Some tank cars we can do that. Others like chlorine and stuff like that, we have to scale or weigh them. And we have systems to do that. They have gauging devices that they can have some air. So again, top and bottom, TOPOV, top operated, bottom outlet valve. So there's some things up there. And these are called the bread box or mailbox. And they just have various fittings here as a corrosive tank car. So, and the models now are doing a very good job of putting those all on. They didn't for a long time. So now they're doing because of how they mold them and stuff like that. So, high pressure cars, again, you could have 4 valves on the top or 3. This is the ones that are in the length of the car are the liquid lines, and the one going off the side there is the vapor line. Gauging device, a couple other things there. So they have different things on top. This is what the piping looks like underneath them. So the liquid lines go to these big pipes that go to the bottom, and then there's a little pipe on top for the vapor. The chlorine car will have 4 valves, 2 for liquid in line with the length of the car, and then the 2 side ones, liquid versus vapor. So again, these are the new DOT 117s, what they look like on top. So bottom outlet valves have different, they've changed those and stuff like that. So double shelf couplers now, all tank cars, and even the models. So I got a nice note from our friend Norm Logan 2 years ago, and he goes, Rich, my cars are all up to spec now. They have shelf couplers. Excellent job, Norm. Now, double shelf couplers work really good. They sometimes don't come apart. So this was a BNS train that lost its trucks in route. And because the tank car was empty, the coupler was able to hold it together. Now, when they go through axle counting on the railroad, it says on the front of the paperwork, this train has 200 axles, and then they have axle counters. So they got someplace, and they said to them, "We're short 2 wheels or 2 axles." And they stopped the train, and they discovered those are way back on the track. The product was molten sulfur. So again, the wheels are not connected. There's just a pin that goes in the bottom of the pin there. We get into pressure or into heating, and steam heating is normally how we heat them to get the products out that have to be heated. So again, there's two valves there that put them in, and if it's outside, that it goes in. This is inside the tank, and this is outside where it goes along the side of the tank out there. So. All right, here's one that has a big electric heater system. This is hauling creosote. So they plug it in and heat it up, and then they can get it out of the tank car. There's a creosote plant up by Chicago. Blackguards, again, I've seen as many as 3 related or 4, depending on the hazards and stuff like that. So this is the primary one. This is secondary and also secondary. So, that is not a placard, although it was carrying poisonous products on it. And DOW stands for Dow. X means it's not owned by the railroad, so it's appropriate. Placards on all 4 sides. We said there's a cryogenic car. Valves on cryogenics are either on the ends or the sides to access them. And again, if you miss a placard, that was one of my jobs for BNSF, was to watch when I was taking pictures of trains on this Transcon, was watch for tank cars that didn't have placards. And so every now and then I'd see one, I call Ed and say, "Hey, this car just went by. Here's the number. It's missing a placard." Because it's a couple $1,000 fine. So they'll pull that car out or off the train to get it replacarded before they move it on. So phone numbers, Canada and US. I've never understood why in Canada you have to call collect, for the thing, versus here we have an 800 number. And there's also a Mexico number. When I was in New Mexico working as the hazmat team leader in Diana County, that's, maybe we have to talk to them. I'm not sure I give any credit, that they're really good as compared to US and Canada, but there is a Canadian one. So, yeah, and then there's some other companies that come out and start having their own emergency contact numbers for the product. So this is ethanol, or denatured ethanol, 1987. What does denatured alcohol mean?
It's organic.
It's ethanol, but we add 3 to 5% gasoline to it, so it doesn't taste good if you drink it. From derailments. So there's a UN 1170, there's 1987, and then 3294, 45, whatever, which is gasoline with more than 10% ethanol. So there's 3 different placards. So again, other companies. So another thing that we've seen now that you may model is GPS units on tank cars. So we know where they are in the US, especially Dow cars, which was the starting point, but again, chlorine and other things. So different kinds of GPS units. So this is anhydrous ammonia with GPS. So it's right there. All after September 11th. So there are a lot of tank cars that are going out of service or are being changed to go into other services. And so here's a DOT or DOT 117R, which we talked about. So it was originally a 111, and they did all the things they needed to do to make it a newer standard. So it's a 117 by spec. Originally was a 111. So that's something that's going on because there are rules, as I said right here. I didn't give you time to read it, but these cars have all got to be in different service, different designs because of highly hazardous flammable liquids by certain dates. So, and a friend of mine sent me these pictures the other day. I just stuck them in, and you can't read it. I'll show you closer, but see all the labeling here on the tank car? Okay, that says not for class 3 flammable liquids with an API gravity greater than 50 degrees. So that's the manufacturer, the company telling me these are the things I can put in it. These are the things I can't put in. I have not seen this for a year yet. And I was talking to my buddy Ed Chapman this week. He used to be head of hazmat for BNSF, and I said, "Have you seen these?" "Yeah, but I don't have any clear pictures like what you were given." So here's another one. So that's just telling the shipper and the railroad, this is a certain kind of product. This that situation. So Okay, so I'm at a point to ready to into the tank cars. Where are we on time?
About 2 minutes.
Okay, and I gotta be done, and then what are we gonna do?
We're gonna do lunch.
Okay, let me go a little bit longer and take up a little bit of your lunch as far as that to get through this. And this is gonna come back also, and we can skip it in the tank car industries. Because they typically don't teach these two clinics back to back, in the same day. So we'll go through them quickly. So these are low pressure tank cars. What did blue mean? Celanese or nothing. So they come in different sizes and shapes, things like that. You can see other things on top. So again, the things we talked about are things you can see. This is a phosphorus, if I can say it. See the rollover protection up here on top for phosphorus. Yep. So when you get out there, and they come in all different sizes and shapes and stuff like that. 1.6 3 axles. Anytime I see heavily coated or covered things, that tells me something may be bad about it. So again, acrylic acid stabilized, so it's got something added to keep it happy for the next 20 days before it gets unloaded. So as you get out there and you look at these things, you'll be practicing all these things, high pressure, low pressure. And again, some of these look like, if you just looked at this, you'd take a pressure car because of the shape. But again, go back to the top. What's up there? 4 things. So it's low pressure. So another low pressure tank car, but it looks like high pressure. It could fool you. This is one down in Texas I found with 4 axles on each end, moving between chemical plants. Some of you may remember the old tank trains where they move product between cars. So you can also get low pressure multiple compartments, and each compartment has placards for it and valves and fittings. So this is 2 compartment, 3 compartment, 4 compartment, and 5 compartment. Yeah, so you can put different products in the tanks, or you can use the same product, whatever. AR 211, I said, was just like a 111, except that they certain are carrying mostly non-real hazardous products, high combustible liquids that burn, but don't burn very easily as compared to flammable. So you need to know the difference between a flammable liquid and a combustible liquid based on flash points. And there's 2 different flash points. There's NFPA flash points that change at 100, and there's DOT flash points that change at a higher number and stuff like that. So we have 2 different rules in the country.
Could you take a second and explain about wind socks on the top of buildings and what they're for?
Well, wind socks are to tell you which way to run and which way the vapor is going to blow if there's a release. And so if you drive around, if you have a lot of food places around here, they probably have an anhydrous ammonia refrigeration system. So they're going to have wind socks and that kind of thing. So
don't park near those plants.
Yeah.
If you see this wind sock, don't park there.
yeah.
We had some guys one time spray painted them when it's faded. I went down and said, you can't do that. Because they also tell you the wind velocity.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah. So again, 211s. Again, you just, here it is, AAR 211. So just a little difference between a 211 AAR versus a DOT 111. So again, just looking at different ones here. And then we get into our pressure car, other low pressure cars. This is a little different shape, the 115. This is kind of rusty. This is kind of rusty. These are DOT 115. But when I see a box and insulation, there's something going on here. And I see on the side there CORX. And what does that stand for? X means it's not owned by the railroad. COR is Coors beer. So this is beer concentrate going from Golden, Colorado to plants in Tennessee and in Virginia. And where they find a spring with clean water, they call it the Rocky Mountain Spring. And then they add the beer concentrate. It's all about marketing and advertising and stuff like that. But if you get to Kansas City, a lot of times you'll see Coors cars crossing through there. Another 115. So again, different shapes, things like that. Again, maintenance away. Most of these are going to be low pressure cars. Here's a scale, a car for testing scales. So they not only do they have boxy things, but here's a liquid car, tank car. Again, weed sprayers and high pressure. Again, this is not the marking that I told you before. This is something that they do up in Canada for the company that makes this car. And so again, they just do that orange stripe. Blue is selenage, very good. So here's LPG anhydrous hydrogen fluoride. I used to see that coming into New Mexico from Juarez, where they had a plant. I've seen the tank cars all across the U.S., but again, it's a nasty product. And, here's chlorosulfonic acid. Got a sill underneath here, so it's a real heavy product. In the DOT 105 tank car, we have multiple axles for vinyl chloride going between Oklahoma City and Louisiana. So again, this is the old odd-shaped car that they did for a long time. They didn't work out very well in the railroad industry and derailments because of the laws of physics. And so those have all gone away. I just found some of these out in Utah and some other places. But this shape and stuff just did not do well in derailment and the laws of physics. Here's some old ones out in yeah. So now, when we looked at this car, you said, Rich, that's a pressure car. Yep. One thing on top and stuff like that. So you're thinking right off the bat, LP gas or some sort of flammable thing like that. Well, there's actually a refinery out in New Mexico, on the western end of New Mexico, that puts gasoline in these. So when I look here, this is a 1203 black card, and then it says gasoline. They've crossed out the LPG, and they transport their gasoline from there back east. So you assume, seeing that car, you're thinking LPG or something like that. Gotta look at the placard, gotta look at the labeling. This is transporting gasoline.
How do we get the gas out of it?
Just pump it out of the top. There's no bottom outlet, so they're going to take it out of the bottom. So here's another gasoline filled one. So never assume, don't assume that situation. We need to look and check and stuff like that. Here's refrigerant gases. So here's a thermal insulated car. And I told you the thermal insulation doesn't work very good. So here's the T up there, DOT 114T. Doesn't do very well. So that's kind of gone away. All right, mercaptan for the smell of LP gas and things. Chlorine, 105s. This is a newer chlorine car. It's a pressure rating to 600. But this one had a pressure rating to 500. Again, trying to help with derailments. The valving system is lower, so it's less chance of it being damaged. So again, just take a look out there at different cars. Again, if I see really, really bad stuff, it's going to be a 105. So carbon dioxide could be a 112, could be a 105. Again, butadiene stabilized. See the blue top on there? That's an industry thing. That's this company. And again, butadiene stabilized. Stabilized means what? Something's been added to it to keep it happy over the next 20 days before it gets unloaded. Again, bromine, different sizes and shapes of 105s. This is the world's largest tank car in St. Louis at the train museum there. Just never did well and never got picked up. So again, they can be in small sizes too. So, cryogenic, and then we'll see where we are here. As I said, there's a variety of styles of cryogenic tank cars. Valves are on the side or the ends. And actually, this is a tank within a tank, like a thermos bottle. So again, they put the product in and then they insulate the area, the space between the jacket and the tank, and then off they go. So this could be considered a cryogenic product. It's really cold, but it's not the ones that we typically see. So these are all ethylene cars in Oklahoma area, and they will vent going down the road. If it gets heated up, the pressure, they'll vent, but they don't put poisons in these things. It's not good to vent in neighborhoods with poison. Flammable is a little different. So again, they actually pull a vacuum between the shell, the tank, and the jacket to keep it cold and transported. So if you saw that go by you at a crossing, you'd say there's something different about that car. Remember, low pressure, high pressure, cryogenic, family of its own. It's actually a low pressure car, but it's on its own. So just different styles. And there are some companies that are manufacturing these for the model builders, but they don't look like any of these. That can be a problem. So I've seen this one twice crossing the country, looking at the numbers and stuff. So again, different designs, different looks, different shapes. And here, this one's been venting. You can see the frost on the piping. So this is an old hydrogen car. So, and some of you probably have bought these box cars that had a tank inside the car from Lindy. So, and this is the future of tank car travel for natural gas. It was proposed, it was knocked down, probably back. And so again, the natural gas will be, liquefied natural gas. So anyhow, that's the future of moving that stuff. So, just quickly, old tank cars, 103s, and you can go to museums and see these and real railroads things. But again, depending on what era you're modeling. So they're out there. This is one that had diesel fuel and water in it, 2 compartment. And then of course narrow gauge tank cars, and then they really had these. If you go to the in Texas, Amarillo Model Railroad Museum or Club, it's right across the track, right across the street from the BNSF main line. They actually have one of these cars that was given to them because Amarillo was the mecca for helium in the U.S. They're not finding other places, but all these cars used to be filled in the Amarillo on the west side of the DOT facility and stuff like that. So they have one there. You can take pictures, open up the back doors to see what it looks like inside. Great place for modeling. It's right behind the Amarillo Model Railroad, which is a great stop if you're traveling. So we also have training tank cars to train emergency responders. This is BNSF. I used to work with this car. It's got all the valves and fittings on top, things on the bottom. You can go inside it and stuff like that. I was out at a hazmat conference in New Jersey years ago when I was working for Homeland Security, and I said to this guy who was working with the model railroad, "We're talking about tank cars." "Oh yeah, I got a lot of them." But I bet you I can show you one you don't have in your collection. "Oh yeah, sure, come on." So we go down to the hobby shop on Friday night. Leads me in there, and they have this one on display for consignment. Somebody's trying to sell it, and I'm like, brass, and all these things. But this car here, when it originally came out, was painted like this. Then it went to BNSF, and BNSF repainted it. So I actually have this car in my collection, and that was the same car, but in the real size. But anyhow, short story. So like I said, it was like $325 or something for the car, and I said, "Would he take $275?" And they called the guy up Friday night again, like 9 o'clock or whatever. Guy says, "Yeah, he'd take it," and I bought it. I've never told my wife or wives how much I paid for that car. Fred, Barbara, keep it to yourself now. You run into Joe with me sometime. But anyhow, it's a brass car and expensive. But these are some of the training chains from the different railroads and different industries that we train emergency responders with. So you may actually see them go by the crossing. So I do have some pictures of firefighting cars, but Fred says it's time to eat lunch. So let's go ahead and break, and we'll pick up for the next one, which is right after lunch. We're going to talk about selecting industries for your layout.